we're here to talk about, a few of your projects. You've been, I guess, while other people have been, locked at home, you've had the opportunity to go out and, make some films. So that, it's been quite nice, to be able to continue working.
Yeah.
I guess the main two I want to sort of focus on is Confession and Last Survivors.
Yeah.
And they're both quite intimate films. I'm guessing partially because of the the COVID that they were filmed during.
Exactly.
Each is a very small cast of characters. What was it about these projects that sort of spoke to you and made you want to be part of them?
Well, it was interesting. In the case of Last Survivors, myself and Alicia and Drew Van Acker had signed on for that, and a year before. And then it didn't look like it was going to be able to happen, purely because of this, what we're in. And we were going to be shooting somewhere in the forest, and it was going to be like summer, and it was going to be a completely different sort of aesthetic look. And you've seen it, Kat, haven't you?
Yeah.
So so then they kind of Montana made it possible to go and shoot there, and so we were due to do that in the sort of February, March of that year when COVID happened. I can't even remember what year it was, 20 blah blah. And then that became available. So that was fantastic. And going to Montana and spending the time doing it there in a very sort of a very splinter unity world. And I'd loved the relationship in that movie between the three of them, really. It's very much a three-hander, and everybody has their foibles and everybody has their quirks, and I just thought it was a nice bit of writing, and I really liked Drew, the director, because Drew, the actor as well, is lovely, but really got on well with Drew Milray, and we talked a lot about how what in an apocalypse what that would look like and how you would try and protect your kid. And so that was really fun. We spent quite a few hours talking about how that would be, what it would feel like, what it would look like, and as you know, there's some twists and turns. It's a thriller, but had an amazing time on that. With Confession, it was a really interesting situation. We were bunked down, myself and Anna and our kids were bunked down in the middle of lockdown, teaching homeschool on Zoom, which Anna and I will put our hands up and say we are not cut out for. And Dave Beaton, who's an old mate of mine, who goes by the name of Ronnie Thompson as well. So I always call him Ronnie, but his real name's David. But he contacted me and he said, look, everybody sat at home. I'm doing a bit of writing. I've written something for you. He'd written it in like 2 weeks. And I read it and I was like, crikey, this is so good. As you know, because of the holy grail of doing something low budget and with a small crew is obviously to have a small cast, but also to have sort of 1 or 2 locations. But then the difficulty is making the drama work in that location and not feel like that location has become set bound, and that and finding a way to make that location work in many different ways, so you don't just feel like you're watching a play. And I thought he did a brilliant job of that. And he and I talked about, loved the character. And it was one of those situations where who knows what the film would look like if it was not done in quarantine time or not done during COVID time, because these things have a specific, like, we talked about who we would want to play the priest, and Colin was one of the first people to come up. And so once we got Colin on board, then we were looking at who we were going to cast as well. And Claire Asherty is a friend of mine, Claire Hope Asherty. We worked together in 2016 on a thing called Shots Fired, and I think she's fantastic. And most people here, when she works in America, think she's American. Absolutely no one can believe that she's not American because she works here as, you know, and so, but she is, she sort of spends her time between her boyfriend's place in America and her place in northeast London, and so getting her was a real bonus because I think she's fantastic, and it's just one of those situations, you know, it's crazy. We shot that in 12 days. We shot Confession in 12 days, and I'd come from doing a movie in Bulgaria, and got to London, to our house in London. My son came back from university. He sat with me for 2 weeks. He was doing his university Zooms, and I was just sitting learning the lines. And I think we talked about this, but the great thing about quarantine, the great thing about being locked in a building for 10 days is it's fantastic for learning your lines. Like for an actor, it's amazing because I literally left Confession and went to Montana. And I sat in Montana for a week by myself and learned the lines for Last Survivors. So the lovely thing about being, like, most people's like idea of being locked in a room for 10 days is awful, like not being able to go out. But if you're an actor and trying to learn your lines, it's perfect. And in the evenings, I do research. And so I'd look at my lines all day. And then in the evening, I watched a bunch of movies to do with the Confession topic. And I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I watched specific movies that have a sort of thematic similarity. And Billy, my son, would sit and watch them. And we watched all these old thrillers and stuff every night. So we'd make dinner, watch a movie, discuss. It was fantastic. So, you know, it was just one of those lovely situations where we were able to work during lockdown, and I was able to do some little indies and work with some friends and some really cool people that otherwise we wouldn't have necessarily been able to do.
I mean, there's a lot of lines in Confession to learn, you know, there's,
yeah,
it must be quite nice for an actor because I guess there seems like would have been a lot of long takes and you guys were just sort of like left with it.
There's a scene, and obviously have you seen it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the movie's like 82 minutes, but the script was something like 110 pages, which usually transfers to 100 minutes, 110 minutes, right? But Dave had sort of written it long so that he could cut it tight. Yeah. So I swear to God, I'm not making this up. There is a sequence with me and Colin at the end, and the takes were 27 minutes each. And so if you imagine that over a day, every time you reset, so you've got a 27-minute take, and then you've got people coming in and doing makeup checks, resetting of props and stuff like that, and then it's another 27-minute take. You only get to do a few, obviously, because of the day, and we were shooting in 12 days. So it was a real, I mean, Colin and I just got on brilliantly, and we were always like, any moments that we got, we were working things out and sort of, you know, sort of working where if we missed anything, if there was any color that needed shading in anywhere, if there was a moment that we felt that we'd got in those takes, like trying to sort of work on that moment so that when we approach that moment within the take, there may be some sort of difference for Dave to be able to use in that take. And so really fascinating stuff, but literally felt like sort of doing a play. And when you run for that long, when you run on a take for that long, there's a sort of immediacy to it, to being in that situation with another human, where you sort of start sort of becoming joined in a way. Anna's got a really interesting way of putting it. She says it's very hard when you're working with somebody that you really like and you look up to a little bit, somebody like Con or whomever, where you sort of vampire off their energy.
Right.
That's her phrase. And because you're so sort of engaged with what they're doing, you sort of start picking up their cadence and their tonal sort of shifts and stuff like that. So we were very cognizant of trying not to do that, so that it doesn't become sort of, you know, one thing, especially when there's only two of you talking, you know. So it was amazing, and 12 days to shoot that much stuff, and a thriller at that is, I think it's a really cracking little movie, and I think it's a real achievement, and wouldn't necessarily have got to do it and under normal circumstances.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that always amazes me about actors is the way that you guys can, you know, slip in and out of all these accents. You know, this is a film that's set in America with American characters, but, you know, like you say, most of the cast is British or Irish. You know, how do you guys sort of work to recalibrate? So I think, you know, you were coming off of you've also done Code of Silence, where, you know,
well, that was March. I actually had just been in Bulgaria doing After, and I was playing British in that, and I was with Hero Fiennes, who's, you know, become a dear friend, and I was playing Hero's dad. And I'd just been in Bulgaria doing that, and I got to England, and I got in touch with a dear old friend of mine who is an amazing dialect coach, and we were doing probably an hour a day. It's hard because, you know, sometimes, and again, talking about vampiring, I'm terrible in terms of being with, like, if I'm with somebody who's a Geordie, I love accents so much that I end up sort of, you know, suddenly I'm sort of doing that, and I don't mean to. I'm just like, I just do it because I love people's accents. So, Colm and I tried to stay in accent as much as possible. So we were in this little because of COVID, and literally everything was closed down, because this was like full lockdown, second lockdown in England. Nothing was open, so we were staying in these little sort of in this country club, in these little wooden cabins next to each other, me and him. And Colm lives in Mallorca, and he brought over this amazing, like, Parma ham, and or the Spanish version, Sorrento ham or whatever, and from his local farm, and so I'd go and have little feasts with him, and we'd go through our lines, but we'd do it in accent, you know. And it's just really, you get home from work, we'd make some food, we'd get together, we'd go through the next day's work, we'd talk about it, we'd talk about what we wanted to achieve by it, and we'd stay in accent while doing it. And so it was helpful for me, obviously, because I then went on to Last Survivors, and I'd just been playing American. And so I arrived in Montana, and I was American the whole time I was there, which is great, because you're just then, you know, you're just in it. And it's interesting as an actor, because when you turn up at a town where nobody knows you, there's no reason for them to think that you're anything else. So it's quite hard being an English actor playing American with an English crew, because you want to be part of the gang, you know. But if you're like concentrating and you've only got 12 days to do something like that, then you just have to stay in it, because otherwise you're going to be going from one to the other, and it's not going to. There's certain cadences within. It's not just the accent. There's cadences. You know, Americans tend to sort of start a sentence and go down at the end until they get to the bottom of the sentence. But we don't do that. We go all over the place. We go to the end of the sentence. You know, and it's like, so there's things that you have to really be cognizant of. You might have a great accent, but the cadence is wrong. You know, so it's staying in it really helps.
Well, I want to commend you on your Nottingham accent for Code of Silence, because I am Nottingham born and raised. So
thank you. Same coach for me.
No. Yeah.
Thank you. Again, that was really fun. I loved that character, and I did quite a lot of research into Nipper, and And again, 14 days we shot that. Very similar. We were just in this warehouse, and what was really nice about that was very similarly, I ended up with like 3 or 4 of my really close friends, because I just went, let's get some great actors who aren't working. And, for whatever reason, they've got a week off here or 2 days off here, or they're not working for a bit because of the situation. And I was able to get Mike Higgs and Alec Newman and Max Roxley and Ian Sharp, and they all came in to do days for nothing, because it was super low budget, and we just had a ball. So again, really great. And I stayed in me. It's funny actually, because I was doing some lines yesterday, and the character kind of reminded me of Nipper. He's not from Nottingham, but as I was doing it, I just suddenly started sort of going into my Nottingham accent, and I couldn't. And he's not from that at all, but he just felt like that character. It's hard.
Yeah, and you really have nailed the Nottingham accent, because just then you dropped your H, and that's what we do. We don't do H's.
There was a specific one that I really liked that Royson, my friend Royson Carty, who's the dialect coach, she's amazing. She does everything. But Royson, there was one particular sound that isn't like a Manchester sound or that far north. It's a different. West. It's a different. I'd have to look it up, but there's a very specific sound that is so much a part of Nottingham, and I'm a massive Sleaford Mods fan, so I'll go and have a listen to Jason like going off and and sometimes to get me into it, I'd have Sleaford Mods playing for my 1960s policeman.
Right. And outside of acting, you've been sort of steadily pushing into directing over the last few years. I think you've just finished like shooting a bit of Light. I think it's currently in post. Can you share?
I'm like a couple of days away from locking the cut.
Nice. Can you share a little bit about that project, and is directing an area that you see yourself pushing further into as your career progresses?
I love both of them. So they're very different, and the megalomaniac in me is alive and well and kicking, and so that's very much. I'm a very collaborative person on set, but in terms of power, you make all the decisions. So there's obviously some reason I need to do that. No, I really love it, and this project is something that I had, after I directed my first film, I had a really lovely chat with an old friend of mine called Rebecca Callard, who I worked with on The Grand back in '95 with Russell T Davies wrote. And Rebecca had read a review of The Parting Glass, which was that movie back in, we opened at the Edinburgh Film Festival back in 2018. And she'd read a review, it was a really nice review, and she was like, oh my God, congratulations, I don't know if you know this, but I'm writing now. And I said, well, send me something. And it was a bit of Light, and it's an amazing thing. And the lovely coincidence is that she had entered this playwriting prize back in, I think it was late 2017, called the Bruntwood, which is a big playwriting prize, but you enter anonymously. So the judges never get to see who's written the plays. So they're completely judged on their own merit. And she had won a prize there. The judge was Russell T Davies. And he had absolutely no idea that it was Rebecca. So I eventually read it, and time, obviously, getting things and doing things. Anna and I were in the middle of doing FLAC and all of this. I didn't know whether we'd ever have the opportunity to do it. And something else that I'm directing, which is going to happen next year now, got pushed to next year. And I went, let's make Bit of Light. And from like May the 8th, when we made that decision, we were shooting 4 months to the day later. Now, I can't tell you how difficult that is, because that involves so many things happening in order for that to happen. Obviously, raising money is a big one. But we did it, and it's beautiful. And Ray Winston plays Anna's father, and it's got an amazing cast: Pippa Bennett Warner and Yusuf Kakur, and a young newcomer called Luca Hogan. And it's about a mum who has lost the rights, has given up the custody of her 2 children, and is working on herself to sort of get them back, and is moved back in age 39 with her dad, and just feels like she's a disaster, and is trying to work out how she gets to see her kids again, or make herself well. And it's really beautiful, and Anna's absolutely extraordinary in it, and Ray is, I think it's one of the best things I've ever seen Ray Winston do, and I'm a big Ray Winston fan, so I'm really excited for that. And as I said, we're getting close to Picture Lock. Picture Lock will be next week, and then we go into the dub and the mix. And I had a meeting this week with my composer, and it's the same composer I've used before, Nathan Barr. Nathan did True Blood. He just won an Emmy for Hollywood. I directed a bunch of episodes of True Blood. That's how I got to really know him well. And he's amazing. So, one interesting thing about him that's fascinating is he's a brilliant cellist. So when you're writing, he writes on the cello. So when you sit with him and he comes up with a tune, and you kind of go, I don't know, is it blah? Is it kind of da 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 da? I don't know, make that up. He'll just go like this, and he plays it on the cello. And he goes, I think it would be better if it's this. And he'll just like do it. And then once he's kind of worked out what it is on the cello, then he'll put it onto the piano. But it's because his key instrument is cello, that's how he writes. It's beautiful to watch. And yeah, so he won an Emmy for Hollywood. He does American Horror Story. He does all of Eli Roth's horror films. So he did The House with the Clock in Its Walls, for instance, as well as all the other Eli Roth movies. And he did The Americans with Matthew Rhys, and he's brilliant. And our budget was tiny. Bless his heart, he's doing it for like 0 pence for me. I'm literally paying for the staples for the music because all we've got. But and he's doing really well. So it's very kind of him to agree to do it for me. Say again.
I was just going to say, it sounds like a really interesting project, and
yeah, it's really beautiful, and we shot it in principally in Suffolk, and then a little bit in Scarborough, and it was really nice being home. I'd been back to do another job that I was in Yorkshire for, and yeah, it was just really nice being home. It was this summer, and it was it all went really well, and I'm really hopeful about it. Touching wood there.
But it's nice to know that some good things have come out of this strange time that we've been in.
Yeah. I've got another thing. This thing that I'm working on, that's probably going to go next year now, is something that came to me that much bigger budget, and Sony TriStar, and that was something that me and the screenwriter have been shaping and rewriting, and so really that's what I've been sort of, apart from the things that we're talking about, that's what I've been really working on, is writing this script for next year. And there's a certain point during this period where I think a lot of people just went, I've got to do something. I can't just, sit. And yeah, we've got some legendary producers on that, and it's really exciting. that one. So
Look forward to it. I think our time has unfortunately come to an end, so I will thank you for taking the time out, and I hope to speak to you, get in touch about a bit of light, and we'll have another chat.
Love it. I'm in.